Good evening, everyone. I apologize. We're beginning our meeting a little bit late because we had a meeting prior to this. This is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee on Wednesday, April 26, 2023. We're meeting at the Gloucester High School Library. As the recent amendments to the open meeting law allows, the school committee will continue to hold meetings remotely. Adequate alternative access to the meeting is provided through the Zoom link below. The public may not physically attend this meeting. Every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate if necessary. I would state that the mission for Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. We are going into executive session as our first order of business. For the purposes, I move that we are going into executive session pursuant to executive session purpose 3 of MGL 39, section 23B, to discuss collective bargaining with the Gloucester Association of Educational Support Paraprofessionals, the Teamsters Food Service Workers, and the Teamsters Transportation Workers. Also to discuss the litigation update. And I moved. So moved. Second. Okay. Roll call vote. Right?
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Mayor Verga?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Melvin?
Yes.
And Mr. Minio?
Yes.
We will be back in open session after we are done with this. Welcome back, everybody. We are in open session. This is the meeting of the Gloucester School Committee continuing on Wednesday, April 26, 2023. I ask that you join me in this salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next order of business is oral communications. The public shall have the opportunity at every school committee meeting to be heard under regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to school business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. Is there anybody in attendance that would like to address the school committee this evening? Seeing none. Next item of business is recognitions. Does anybody have recognitions they would like to bring up tonight? Oh, we're school vacation, so okay. Next is Gloucester High School Advisory Council. We have Kaya with us this evening. Thank you, Kaya, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So we have 22 days left for seniors, which is kind of crazy. It will be 21 tomorrow. We're getting into the home stretch. Yesterday, there were 52 students who participated in the SATs at the high school. Miss Alice Morris coached 5 students with IEPs on writing a resume, a letter of interest, and applying for a well-paid internship at O'Malley. 4 out of the 5 students that she worked with were accepted, and 1 was waitlisted waiting to hear back. We also had 3 DECA members return from the Orlando County Convention Center for the ICDC conference. Isla Black, Jessica Harvey, and Kiara O'Brien. The conference was held in Orlando, Florida, and there were 22,000 high school students, educators, business professionals, and alumni from 8 countries, with the US included, in attendance. Leah Numerosi, who played the Dowager Empress in Gloucester High School's Anastasia, was the first place winner of the Massachusetts Theater Guild monologue contest for her monologue Aggression, Guilt, and Shame. And a celebration will be held at Norwood High School to showcase the entries that won. We also had NHS elections today, and student council new executive board, so who will be taking over next year and doing the same thing I'm doing. And for NHS, the officers are Yashvi Patel, Tolu Ulabanjo, Malia Andrews, and Andrew Fahim. And then for executive, there's President Joey Cody, Vice President Abby Lothers, Treasurer Bella Goulart, and Secretary Emma Smith. And that is all I have today.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your putting
Thank
the
you
time
so
aside.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen.
Have a nice day.
Okay. Next item of business is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? I think maybe to give it a little visibility, I'd like to remove the Gloucester High School Spain field trip. Yes, I see Mr. Basile in attendance. It was Stella. Okay, Stella as well. So we
Also raising. You can speak later. So just like, right?
well, should we take this up and then bring it back to the consent agenda? Okay.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Basile, would you like to tell us and the community all about this fun trip you have going? All the great things that students learn?
Can you hear me?
We can.
First of all, I wanted to mention that before vacation, 14 students took the seal of biliteracy test. And out of the 14 students, 13 passed. So they're going to be recognized during academic recognition night. And they also they will have a seal on their diploma and a cord for graduation. The seal of biliteracy means that they are proficient in another language other than English, which is really good for not only for our school, but also the district and also for the language program at Gloucester High. So I just wanted to add that. As far as the trip, yeah, I've been leading these trips for so many years with Carol and other teachers. This coming year, I would like to do with Teresa Gallo, and we would like to go to Spain. And we already had the trip, if you remember, going to Spain, but then COVID hit and we had to cancel. And to tell you the truth, I was amazed at the response that we got when the trip opened. Within less than a week, we got 50 people signed up, and I have a waiting list of 18.
Wow.
So I guess that speaks volume to the way we run our trips, because our first concern is the safety of the students. So we run a tight ship, and we've done so many of these trips. So I guess you live in Gloucester, I'm sure you must have heard, good things about it. If there is anything else you would like to know, I'll be happy to speak to it.
Anybody have questions?
I do. Okay. Chaperones, did I see 4 chaperones for 50 kids?
No, it's going to be more. I
Okay.
I don't know who the chaperones are going to be, and I have time until actually December to find out, but it's going to be more than 4 people. No,
Okay.
the company gives us 6 to 1.
Great,
Yes,
thank you.
you're welcome. Also, I gave you a packet with all the information about where we're going to go, the itinerary, and also the procedure with meeting with parents, very detailed information that you have in your hands if you need to look at it.
We did. We had it in our packet. Everything was very well organized.
Thank you.
Sounds like a fabulous experience.
I think so too.
It's a great itinerary, Joe,
Thank you.
I think you should invite the school committee as chaperone.
We could have a special bus with you guys.
Okay.
That's funny.
What's the drinking age in Spain?
I don't know.
I know it's 16 in Hungary, so that's why I'm asking.
The chaperones will make sure that the kids are acting appropriately.
Yeah, okay. Curious if that's-
That's why we have chaperones.
Okay,
Yes, the number
so
of chaperones will change.
Yep.
This is the initial paperwork. but like I said, it would be 6-1. No, I mean, I like to run my trip safely, and the main concern is the safety of the kids. So I'm not going to go with 50 kids for 4 people. That would be
Okay, all right, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda in its entirety?
So moved.
Second,
Maria?
Ms. Prince,
yes.
Mayor Burger,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
And Mr. Minio.
Yes.
We will move on. Thank you for attending.
You're welcome. Thank you for your vote of confidence.
Next item is deliberations on education issue in the superintendent's report. We can start with. Okay, subject.
I share my screen, please?
Oh.
All right, so let's I'll give you a few quick updates on a few things that have been going on recently, and then we will I'll show that in a second. There we go. All right, as we always say, every day matters, and lost public schools, and everybody belongs. Students and staff, of course, and parents and families as well. So do an update from around our schools. Friend James Cook is here to talk about our Career Book Tech program. It's an update and also the proposed expansion. And then we'll also do a quick summary of the GBS budget so the committee can vote on the public hearing budget and schedule a public hearing. So a couple things, just big news from O'Malley. We named the new principal, Michael Titus. He hails from Salem. He's originally from Salem. He's been working and teaching in Salem for a number of years at the College Middle School. Been a middle school English teacher, a high school social studies teacher. Began his career in education as a special educated paraprofessional. Been really impressed with Mr. Titus and his interview process and reference checks and everything we've learned about him. Very personal. He's a great experience supporting multilingual English learner student populations in Salem. Really has an impressive knowledge of curriculum instruction. I think one of the things that people really in the O'Malley community who met him, so that included some parents, but also staff, also students, really appreciated just his ability to connect with folks and his sort of interest in working with and meeting students and connecting with students as well. I think he'll be a very visible leader, one who connects well with and supports staff well, but also connects well with students and families. So just excited about him. He's going to come on starting June 18th and then work with transition with July 18th. July 17th. I have that right now on the third try, July 17th. And we'll work through with the already working with Lynn Beatty about transition in the summer on that, and also we'll be working with him to get a time he can come up to meet, have some time at O'Malley this spring while the school year's still on. Great news.
The transition period with the meetings that it.
Yeah, so we're just working through that now, and we're going to make sure that staff knows about that once we're solidified it.
You didn't have a timeline for when she exited.
Working on that still.
Okay.
Yep. But we'll make sure that the staff know that as soon as we have all the kids work out on that. Yep. So we want to make sure that Titus gets to meet, has some time at O'Malley during this May, perhaps coming for a staff meeting and sort of stuff. So just get here, but then we'll be working. I'm in close contact with him just about the transition and already starting to talk with him and also with Lynn as well. Great news coming out of the performance of Anastasia. So last time we were here, Anastasia just completed, but since then the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild has recognized 6 of our Gloucester High students for their performances in Anastasia. So 3 of the leads, Emily Gossam, who played Anya, Elijah Saruf, who played Dimitri, and James Buckley, who played Gleb, were nominated for best performance in their roles in Anastasia, which is a great credit to them, their hard work and direction. And then also students Tyler Weed, Leah Numerosi, and Jessica Cody were nominated for Best Feature Performance. I imagine, although I don't know, is probably similar to like Best Supporting Actor in the Academy Award or Emmys perhaps. But just as everyone here said, this it was a great performance and made up of great performances, and they've been recognized for that. I do not know if there is like in Academy Awards where then there is a person who's named the winner of that, but we'll find that out.
A lot of new things now that we started this around COVID, this entering this particular competition. So every year it seems to be a little bit different. So I don't know that.
Right, but just to have a few highlights from the educational theater guild's review of Anastasia, okay, which I think is just in its solid production of the musical Anastasia, Gloucester High School has crafted an incredibly vibrant and rich tale. This is a colorful story indeed, and the production team and student company of actors and technicians makes superb use of a full palette. From start to finish, the reviewer was captivated by the sprawling adventures and human discoveries of its characters, all supported by technical components that elevated the entire experience. I've never had the pleasure of seeing this musical prior to viewing, and I enjoyed each and every minute of the theatrical journey we took on its expansive landscape. Simply stated, this production was smartly directed, exquisitely cast, and produced with great care. All that made for rewarding evening theater. And so, just a great summary review of great performance. I think I hope we're all proud of it, and I certainly hope that students are proud of. And I really appreciate how the reviewer here noted not only the acting and directing, but also the technical components. They're very skilled with their production. So just really appreciate that. A few more things that are happening. This is more springtime, which means our backyard growers partners are back at it with our students, including the backyard growers salad days, plantings this month at our elementary schools. So there you have a picture of backyard grower educator Haley Small working with students at Plum Cove. In May and then early June, students will harvest the salad vegetables and get to sample the leafy greens that they planted and grown. So I really appreciate, as always, backyard growers hands-on work with our learners. You had that at Gloucester Preschool as well. Veteran School, they're planting kale at Gloucester Preschool. Can't wait to harvest veggies at Veteran School. Flamingo spinach at East Gloucester. Something I've never heard of before. Perhaps it's pink, I've got no idea. And then even students there, as all of our students are learning about soil health. And then West Harris School, our school students are silly gardeners as well. So just really
There's my daughter.
there you go.
There's my daughter.
Very excited.
I think that's.
You probably should know.
Yeah. Taking that together.
So then the other piece is another tiny bookworm literacy event. So this is about early literacy, work we do with families and young children. And really the intention is to lay the educational foundation for providing opportunities to learn and build early literacy skills. This was just on Monday. The participants read stories together, created a craft, and also planted springtime flowers to take home for Mother's Day, which we assume will grow and hopefully bloom by then. And part of that is parents receiving helpful tips reading to their children.
It's preschool, yes.
Yeah, preschool, but no, I think also preschool and before. Yeah, so it's really outreach that very important. Exactly. Right. And then more great work by our GHS students. I hope you've seen this. If you haven't, please see it before you go tonight. Gloucester High School senior Alina Castro, who was with us at our last meeting, which worked with GF. Just before that, posted her mural "Looking Forward," and so it's in the main hallway. As you enter into Gloucester High, you see that these are actually 4 seniors in caps. They're actually representing real people: Isaac Johnson, Alina Castro herself, Vanessa Torres, and Juan Hughes. And this mural is actually one of the legacy projects recognized by the Gloucester 400+. And you'll notice behind the students are symbols of Gloucester and their high school experience. So it's just another great work by Allie, but also installations that'll be here for years and years. And so over the past couple of years, student artwork popping up murals in the stairwells, also this one. So just adding bit by bit, great student artwork around the building. Always a nice touch. That's what I have in terms of this updates. And now I'm going to switch to Mr. Cook.
As we transition, I want to give a shout out to Lorinda Cerruti, our teacher in particular, for helping guide that particular project with Allie. Allie was absolutely gushing about Lorinda at the unveiling that we had earlier this week, ribbon cutting. It's a really special occasion. Allie also revealed that many of, and Greg was there, right? That the symbols, like each of those panels, we look closely, they are inspired by peers who, and some ideas from Allie, but also from peers who suggested things that should go in the mural to represent like this time period, right? Things from the high school, like books they've read, and just like it's an inside joke about marinara sauce in there that I hadn't noticed before, but that got pointed out to me. It was great. And there's just a lot, several other like sort of details about kids' lives and things about our time and our city as well. The Greasy Pole and Fiesta and different pieces. So there's a lot to look at. So for years we'll be able to go by and notice new things about the mural. So it's really, really exciting. It's an exceptional mural. I mean, all murals are great, but it's a real knockout.
All right, so we're going to give Mr. Cook here and Brenda Waslicker here, give an update on our CBTE program and also the proposed expansion program.
So earlier this evening, we had a joint meeting of General Ed Advisory Committee for our vocational programs, as the program advisory committee also met. And the school committee, we did a version of this presentation at that time, and we're going to review a few of those pieces for the committee and the public, and then also dive into where we are with our two featured goals and moving forward. So to familiarize folks in the committee know this, but folks in the public may not know that we have our 4 current JHS Chapter 74 CBTE programs: Advanced Manufacturing, Automotive Tech, Carpentry Tech, and Electricity Tech. These are all shops that our state considers to be non-traditional female programs, which of course for us means that we are actively recruiting young women into these programs and making special efforts to encourage gender equity in each of these programs. So the next 3 slides outline some of the highlights from our vocational programs this year. Last year, around the same time, we had all of the highlights boiled into 1 slide. So this year, we'll take a look at 3 things, and Brenda will talk a little bit about some of the things we want to highlight for this year, highlights from this past year.
We have Perkins funding, which is annual, perennially annual. We have some, we're bolstering our program advisory committees with people in the community. And we are going for some grants. We've already attained 1 grant and another grant is pending for our programs.
I also want to keep on pointing this out because I think this is one of the things that we see a lot of and more than we have in the past. It's just the second bullet there, which is just for our students or CBTE students going on more field trips, site visits, getting out into the community, seeing presentations, and also people coming in from the community into the school as well. So that's a big shift, and also it's a part that really helps build attachment to it. So and connect with the community too. So that's one of the parts I'm most excited about.
Leon Waugh has generously funded a second instructor in auto, so that means we can double our numbers. Our safety survey from 2017, COVID interrupted, has now been finalized. We have gotten a grant from the General Electric Foundation for installation in the amount of about $18,000. And we want to focus, our next big event is the Career and Vocational Technical Education Showcase Night. Awards for Outstanding Student, Most Improved Student, and presentations by the Best Professional Portfolio, which is an online professional documentation of their time here at Gloucester.
Sorry, do you know what the actual date is?
It's May 11th.
May 11th.
It's definitely May 11th. Yeah. It's an evening program. We're a potential grant from the state for $500,000 is pending. We get notification hopefully mid-May. That's going to add equipment and upgrade our shops. We are very, very happy and grateful for Brunt Workwear. They're going to come in and give our committed vocational students free work boots on May 11th as well in a daytime assembly. We are in the process of trying to bolster our programs for the partnership with O'Malley School. Most recently, we are developing 2 mini camps, one for carpentry and one for advanced manufacturing, and that is in the works.
Yeah, so you're gonna, yeah, go ahead.
Go forward.
Yes,
Tell me when.
you'll see where we get there. And I'll explain.
Right down.
There you are. All right, so so those are, you know, taking a look at some of the highlights from this year, things we've been able to do, been able to bring in a lot of money. You got to see a lot of money we've been able to bring in to fund our projects and our strengthening of the 4 programs that we have that already exist. You also were able to see how we're able to do more events that get students out into the community, get the community out into our programs, and able to see how through meetings like the one we had earlier this evening, we're able to, again, get folks in to advise us about how to strengthen our vocational programs. This is a snapshot that I've been giving every year, and now Brenda's joining me to give every year of what our enrollment is. So you can see that our enrollment for the year coming, we have had, if you take a look at the folks selecting advanced manufacturing, auto tech, carpentry tech, and electricity, we have only three of our students from the middle school selected advanced manufacturing this year. This is brand new information to us, so we haven't been able to do the sort of post-mortem of like how that changed from the year before to this year. But through the work we've done so far, although there were 3 selections, we do have 9 students currently entering the program, and we'll be looking to, in other words, we've done work since getting those selections. 9 students in the program, we'll be looking to get that number up to the maximum of 15. So we've got some time to do that. We're starting, last year at this time, we were still finalizing the selection process. So we're way ahead of the game right now. So we can do a lot of direct recruiting to fill the shops. And you can see we've already, Brenda really has already been doing that, starting with 3 selections, getting up to 9 students in the program. You can see automotive tech, we were oversubscribed as usual, 38, but we have room for 30 students. Carpentry tech, again, over subscribed at 24 with 15 students starting next year. And then electricity with 12 students, but because of the over subscription in other places and second choices, able to fill that with 15 again this year. Again, we haven't had a chance yet to revisit, why fewer applications at this point. Is it because we were earlier? Right? We don't know, that might be part of the issue. We will be going where we are, again, looking to fill that advanced manufacturing number. We'll continue our work with O'Malley to fill each of the programs. And then we'll also do our usual review of, well, how did this go? What happened with the number of applications this year. That's kind of where we are now, but we'll come back and give you a report on what we find out when we look into that. But we expect to have full first year across the board jobs.
So these are just incoming freshmen, is
That's
that
right.
correct? Okay.
Yep.
I just have one quick question. How and if do you reach out to parents in relation to this? I guess back to our last meeting and discussing how such a labor shortage. And I don't hear that conversation happening in the community very much, you know, I think people are, they realize, oh, it's a 3-month wait, but nobody's really connecting that to like what's going into this necessarily. And so I think the conversations in terms of recruitment really need to be had with parents, like, here's a labor shortage, here's what these kids can make right out of high school. We really need some help getting some kids into these programs, what do you think? That to me feels almost more important than trying to recruit the kids.
Yeah,
Parents have
and
a
that.
lot of influence on course selection.
So for that advanced manufacturing, we will definitely be reaching out to parents in the 8th grade for that.
Yeah.
You know, we don't just, I mean, we do, you know, we have we have an open house. We have a night here about scheduling where we help them. We spend a lot of time talking about our vocational programs with parents at both of those events. And that pathway, and that's a big thing that we, you know, it's a big thing that we talk about is how this is not a pathway that it also, so as much as it is an alternative to going to college, it also doesn't exclude going to college. Because if you're making good money through a trade, you can then go to college without you know, taking in as much debt. And so right there, it's a complementary pathway. And often, as we you know from various employers, you can start in working in a trade for a company, and then they will pay for you to go on to college, get additional training costs. So all of those are things we talk about with parents. But yeah, for that number that you're seeing there in that first line, that's a big, you know, parents are a big part, because we know that 8th graders aren't necessarily there. We know that it isn't directly to 8th graders about their future. I mean, partially it is, right? Because when I'm excited, there are things we can say about advanced manufacturing that are exciting to a kid about how you get to spend your time both on a computer and doing something physically. That's one of the things we try to say about advanced manufacturing all the time. It's like got both parts to it. And you love computers and you like working with your hands. You in this program here, you can do 2 different things that you like to do because you've never heard of it before. That's a kid part, and then the parent part is the part you brought up.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to have people who, I feel like I was the generation that got sold the college route and only the college route, right? And there's plenty of people that I know that wish they went to the trades. And really have some regrets that they didn't because of the enormous amount of debt that they have for basic liberal arts degree. And it's almost like you have those people come and say like, if I had known, right?
Oh,
Like,
I hear what you're saying.
if I had more
Oh, that's
information about this,
Yeah.
it would have been really helpful for me because I didn't necessarily need the art degree. This is something I was more interested in, but didn't pursue this.
And please, sorry, I know you're.
No, it's okay.
Advanced manufacturing and electrical, for example, have foundational skills for electrical engineers. So you can still go have that college route if that happens. And we still have not had the 8th grade tours. So the 8th grade students have not seen the shops yet. That's happening Friday. I don't know what the timetable was last year, so that might be something that also has influenced the numbers.
Well, we had the evening tours, but not the day tours.
Right, they did not physically, during the open house, we didn't go through the shops.
Okay,
I don't
so you
know.
might see that.
Yeah,
Just helpful if you know individuals who might help in this. You're describing some folks that you know who have that story. You know, it's harder for us to identify them. So if you know folks, just pass them along.
Leadership program advisory. That's what they're there for.
So 2 things just on that, like I remember since I've been on the school committee, we had someone come through automotive who went on to like an aerospace. Remember, it's like, which has always stuck with me because that's amazing. And I would never have thought of that. So I think it's also promoting from what's been happening here and what the possibilities are. The second thing is, and this could be my own ignorance, so just correct me, but like advanced manufacturing as a name.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
Right,
It's not sexy.
it's not sexy, and also like, what is it, right? Now, I understand that that's what it's called, but it's sort of like, we've been saying about executive functioning, like, what else can we call this? Because, no, but because every time we go through there, I'm like, oh, right, that's what it is now. I'm not very well educated in this, but I do think there is a gap. Electrical, we know what that is. Automotive, we know what that is. Carpentry,
Advanced manufacturing needs something else.
I agree.
It's
100%.
called the machine shop.
It's a huge PR issue, but the state says you have to call it that.
So the state can call the program that.
We can name it anything we
But as
want.
we promote it,
Yes.
we can come up with other language. I mean,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
advisory board, the people who know. Because I think you get more people interested when people know what it is.
Yeah.
And this is just, it's sort of, I mean, from my perspective, it's sort of impossible to understand what advanced manufacturing machine tech is.
It does sound pretty boring.
Sounds like work.
That's too much work.
None of the words,
Manufacturing work.
none of the words pop out to me.
Bill, what do you think?
Well, first, I don't think, I mean, advanced manufacturing isn't a local, term. It's used in industry, right? I mean, it's kind of used across the board, right? But most people don't say, I mean, when I think of advanced manufacturing, I think 3D printing or, 3D printing with CAD files, working off a computer. I mean, yeah, we can name it something different. And I think
3D,
it's
that's
probably
already
a good
exciting.
idea.
Like, 3D is better.
Yeah.
It's the newest of the technologies.
Why not like computer
electricity.
science?
So I think the point we'll take, and then, yeah.
It's a PR issue.
It's a PR issue, but we can.
And you should know, before this grant, the machines we had were like, what, decades old? They were so
This is
old. Really elite.
Yeah. Right.
The machines that we had in machine shop were aged. And the city, the employers of Gloucester were hiring kids out of the automotive shop to do the skills that you really needed out of that machine shop, because the kids were more advanced in automotive than they were from the equipment they were using. So
So
that's how bad
advanced
it was.
computer 3D design, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of catchy words that you guys.
And the other thing that the industry is kind of, people don't realize is, people think, oh, 3D printing is mostly plastic. Well, they're now 3D printing in metals, they're ceramics.
Body parts.
Houses,
Yeah.
they're making 3D homes.
So,
Replacement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I do like the idea of what we want to do is be thinking about how we get those numbers of students who are interested in that particular program to increase. And I do think how we talk about it is a big part of that, and as we'll be doing Friday, getting students into the space is another way. And then again, we're doing a lot of things earlier this year than we have in the past. So we're hoping that, we have 6 more slots. We're gonna get 200 kids in there on Friday. And we get 6 more kids to choose it out of visiting on Friday. That solves the issue right there. And then with parent outreach and so on. But yeah, some more ways of talking about it will be helpful. I appreciate it.
And I don't want to talk about, I don't want to take up too much time on it, but I wonder if this, if you have that many kids in there to introduce the program to these kids. Hey, bring in some guys that are good at selling, the electrical program or selling 3D, advanced manufacturing.
3D printing, see, she's already.
Get
referring.
kids excited about it, so they go home and say, gee, that doesn't sound, I'm out of class half the time and I can learn how to be an electrician. Maybe that. I guess
Kids are
there's a
out
little bit of salesmanship to it.
Sure, yeah, the kids finding the right students are is often our best bet when you see an older student to emulate.
Yeah.
I think you all have been tours and
Yeah.
you've gotten to hear
Very
things from kids. Yeah.
It's more like a marketing perspective rather than a sales perspective.
Mayor, you have a question?
Yes, do we send kids to tour places like Bomco or Applied Materials to sort of see what they could be doing? So advanced manufacturing, that's what we have right here in town in several places. So to see some of the
We just came back from
aerospace
Bromco.
products, things that go into jet engine. Yes, do we take them to places like Bomco?
I mean, I'm sorry,
you know,
not
the kids can
Bromco,
see
Applied
parts of-
Materials. We just
Yes,
came back
both
from
of them.
Applied Materials. But that doesn't
Okay.
solve the 8th grade PR issue either. But we've had a lot of field trips this year, and Applied Materials was one.
But I think the piece, Greg, that you're speaking to is more maybe related to that summer program that we're planning for this upcoming summer and incorporating the visits into the summer program that we've begun to plan for with some funding that, we've been able to find. That would be where we get the 8th graders. Does that make sense? Perfect.
Yes,
Okay,
because I mean, the stuff they make in shop, you know, like the lighthouses and other things are great. And chess sets when my brother was the machine shop teacher. But when they go to Bombco and a place like Bombco, when they're seeing a part that's going into a GE jet engine, you know, it really puts it into perspective of what they could actually be doing. And it's, I used to work at Bombco and I hadn't been in there
For a long time.
for 20 years and the place is just my 2 cents.
so as I alluded to at the beginning, we have two goals. One is to continue to strengthen and grow existing programs. Talked a little bit about what we've done this past year to do that, and then to expand CVTE with additional programs that enroll more students and a broader range of students, particularly as we think about the pathways that will be best for our students after they leave Gloucester High School. So these are things we're already engaging in sustainable improvement of our equipment and curriculum and learning opportunities in our 4 Chapter 74 programs. We've heard a little bit about the grants before that Brenda talked about, partnering with O'Malley to present programs to students and families in engaging ways, both there and up here, maintaining industry and community partnerships, just like through the Program Advisory Committee meeting held in November and the General Advisory / Program Advisory meeting we just did today. We need to continue to strengthen our communication with students, right? As we talked about, we got some ideas just right here at this meeting, so that's great. I just talked about the summer camps, the tours. We'll keep improving these things, become better at pitching these programs, better at the vocabulary around them and connecting with families about them. And then this year we've just expanded so many partnerships that Brenda really, this is a tremendous strength that Brenda has, is creating partnerships. And I'd be, just I know we wanted to highlight a couple of things. So we talked the girls in trades and women in trades sort of partnerships. We talked a little bit about that
So
way of strengthening.
they visited in Boston, the local union hall, and there was a big trade expo where they could speak at tables and see themselves. Women that own businesses, women that worked in OSHA, safety, all different aspects of the trades. And some of the, they came back very excited, and some of the seniors were, I'm in, this is what I'm gonna do. This is the eureka moment for them. Girls in Trades, that's a throwback name, but that's what they call it. We have like an internal group and an external, they go out to other schools and they network with students their own age. And we also network with Constructing MA. They offer externships for teacher learning, and they offer different programs. One of them is a mini grant. So the construction students, which would encompass carpentry and electrical, can apply for $500 micro grants for things like driver's ed, books, should they choose to go to school, incidentals, tools. So those are some of the things that are in the works.
Great. So the other part of the goal is the expanding part. So in addition to everything else we've been doing, Brenda has been working really hard and then looping me in on the research. This is our research year, you may remember from last spring. So exploring potential for a new cost-effective program for students who are not being served by our current programs. That's involved in that is conducting labor market research with Mass Hire Workforce Board, reviewing the Northeast Blueprint, talking to students to determine what students want in a new program. And then the next step would be designing the program, developing a budget, identifying staffing. These bullet points are laid out by the states. They tell us how to go about adding a program. So to do that involves seeking grants to support the funding, seeking partnerships, internships, work study opportunities. Again, this is what's required. Establishing a program advisory committee for an expanded program, developing that curriculum, and then we would need to consult with Essex Tech, as well as the state on adding the program because there are regional vocational technical school and then folks at the state with whom we work closely. So you may remember this was the timeline we presented last year. Doing what we've done this year is the research, which we'll show in a minute, which is quite extensive, really. Next year would be the application, right? So there's a very formal application process, step-by-step process. We would work very close with deadlines, but we work very closely with the state. And then if you know, with funding and if we get approved, we would then be able to, in 2024, 2025, move forward with a new program. So here's the unveiling of our finding, the big moment. So all roads led to medical assisting for us. And Brenda, if you could talk just a little bit about how these areas of equity, the community buy-in and student buy-in, and then the workforce side all led us to this road.
So as far as equity is concerned, medical assisting is a non-traditional male as the state documents it. So this will attract more females into the programs and create more equity that way. There's student interest. You could have student-run blood drives, work closely with the Red Cross, for example, and partner with pharmacies, hospitals, nursing homes, and even different programs like Project Learn, which is done through Harvard. The workforce growth is absolutely huge. There are extra funds through the Capital Skills Grant Massachusetts program for anything in the health fields. It supports community outreach, again, with the blood drives. It's high priority growth in need through that, the document created by the Workforce Investment Board. It's a critical industry with high priority, one of the three. And it's not an existing North Shore Tech program. It's a complementary program that's in the medical field. North Shore Tech has health assistant. This is just a snapshot of the scope and sequence for freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. So you go from vital signs and infection control over to strep, rapid flu tests, urinalysis, or wound care. And then as juniors, you're working on vital signs, infection control, and again, greeting patients at a higher level.
Then what do you do?
Is the next slide.
Deal.
As seniors, you do work study, disease and pathology, and phlebotomy. Back in junior year, it is required. By the time we go to junior year, we will need to go out. The students need a certain number of hours in that program. So it would be necessary to have a second teacher because you need a teacher on site at the hospital we partner with and another one back at the ranch for the younger group. There are courses, you can develop an articulation with medical terminology courses. There are over 100 career pathways in this field. The workforce growth in these careers is 37 to 52%. That is absolutely outrageous, the call for in the workforce. These students will be placed and they have high paying career paths, as you can see from the salary levels. When they are a senior, they can take through the AMT, the exams for medical assistant, medical laboratory scientist, medical laboratory technician, and phlebotomy technician. Looking at Peabody High, I've been talking to them. They said they have 100% passing rate in these exams for their seniors, although some opt to skip it and go right into the industry. So there are choices for them. These are two students from here that I talked to and their feelings. One was interested in health since kindergarten. That's what she always wanted to do. The other one's excited to try new things and wanted to go into a health career to segue into veterinary.
Gives you just a sense of what some of our students, are saying as we, talk to kids about this possibility and their interest in something like this.
And just the different entities that are here with us in this community that we can partner with. And it's just a small sample. There's many, many more.
How do, if you don't mind going back to the starting salaries? How do those compare to some of the other programs that we have? In terms of starting salaries?
The program we have now existing,
Yes.
It depends. It depends on what you decide to go for a pathway. But today I talked to a student, and I don't know what this translates per year. But hourly, after training, and this is an auto student, she can get $30 an hour. So, and she's just being trained to do state inspections in the local.
that's, full year salary, 12 months a year, that's what they, basically 62,000.
Right.
And these run the gamut. I just pulled the high ones. So.
Yeah, no,
I don't
no,
know.
and that's why I was surprised to see these, and my only hesitancy with this one was I got nervous that it was gonna be very low. Starting salaries, and I was very concerned that we were gonna be. It wouldn't be in comparison to the other ones.
Do you want to say a little bit about that? We talked about this, so.
Yeah. There's two medical programs in the state. There's health assisting and there's medical assisting.
Yeah.
Health assisting is specific to CNAs, which is typically a lower paying.
Okay.
And that's what we kind of, when we sussed it out, this is a program that's going to give them that higher range to go, but it doesn't have to. They could still take medical assisting. If they wanted to be a CNA, they could go to North Shore for 18, weeks, whatever, or a semester and a half. Or a lot of places around here for nursing homes, for example, they will give you a 5-week training in the CNA test. There's another snafu with health assisting. There's some trouble with proctoring that CNA test in-house. The state will not allow you to do it. You have to partner. We would have to partner with another school, and we could probably for health assisting, but not about medical assisting. We could probably partner with local school and swap instructors to when we run the test in the spring. For the CNAs, for the health assisting. But with this program, they can take that online, that test online.
And one of the pieces of health assisting is that the equipment and in terms of in-school equipment and just infrastructure needs is higher. It's more intensive, more costly. And so need more space, et cetera, for our equipment than you do in medical system.
And is this a pathway? Can this be a pathway to nursing if they want to?
Registered nurse, direct to, yep.
And do they get sort of some credit in relation to this work before they get?
I believe once they pass that test,
Yeah.
they can become a medical assistant in a specialized field. And these are the special, like telepsychiatry is a specialized field. A lot of the fields have medical assistants and they just have to choose a field. They'll get that medical assistant credential and then choose a field from there. And I'm not sure about the schooling from there to get to, for example, telepsychiatry, but they'll have that foundation to do so.
Yeah.
There's more schooling after, in other words, but it gets them further along that particular path with a lot more options. And then because of this, getting out in junior year and working, because of the connections we can make to our community, they're gonna see a lot. To have ideas about some of the possibilities, which made this choice really, it's something, I didn't know this going into the study this year, and that was really exciting for me.
So just to piggyback on that a little bit, so as seniors, once they do the work study, they do or they do not come out of this program with any type of certification?
They would have to take it on their own, online.
While they're seniors, before they graduate?
It could be while they're seniors,
Okay.
but they would have to have an individual cost per student, which would be part of the budget.
Yeah.
But the CNA test for health assisting is a proctored test. There's different guidelines.
Right, no, I understand that,
Yeah.
like on the medical, the health assistant program at Essex Tech, they come out of there certified CNAs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
And I understand this is medical, not health.
yes, yes.
So I'm just wondering, how do we help these students come out with certification? Not go get your certification, but
Right.
here as part of your portfolio, Gloucester High School has assisted you to get these certifications, and here they are.
I believe we can do that.
And this is part of like the know-how Peabody has, for example, like folks who are, as part of our next step of work is making those connections happen. And there's know-how that places like Peabody have this.
Right.
Peabody's a great resource, obviously, because they're so similar.
Exactly,
They
yeah.
have a lot of the same problems that we have as well. And so talking to them, they're very similar demographic profile, they're bigger, but in many ways are just incredibly useful for something like this.
Because I can't help but wonder, so my daughter has nursing degrees and everything, and there was so many grants and still is so many grants for that field, and to get students into nursing. And I just can't help but wonder that a part of our program states they will be certified in this. How much more grant money would come our way to help fund this program?
It's something that needs to be researched, for sure. But you want them to have a credential. The state is pushing credentials in every single program.
Exactly, and they're hiring without credentials now, right? They're
Right.
doing that task.
But
But
you
if
want
we
them to
make
have
those
that.
credentials part of the result of our program,
Right.
I can't help but wonder how much more attractive the program would be, how much state grants would come our way because of that, and the partnerships that we develop in the community with either Addison Gilbert Hospital, Seacoast, the new Rockport nursing home, and everywhere else that's hiring
Yeah,
for medical assistant. I just would like to see them go into the workforce right away.
and there's also an office component to this that the health assistant doesn't have. So they could segue into a dentist office and do medical records as well. So that opens up a whole
Even
new
more, yeah.
for whatever they, whatever their allure is.
I just believe in having the certifications come while they're in school, and I like to see as much of that as possible throughout all the programs.
Absolutely.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, first of all, I think this is terrific. It's something that I think we've all been working towards is to build the program. And I think there could have been a temptation to go with something that was feel good or trendy. This is feel good, but also built for the future. And I know that talking to my wife, who was a nurse, that there's a cliff we're approaching as the baby boomers retire. And there's definitely a need to start feeding people into these other fields. And this gives them a leg up. It's certainly, they may not come off the certification, but it gets them the skills they need to prepare them for nursing school. I think one of the problems is nursing instructors are really at a premium right now. So it's hard to get people into classrooms, with the teachers. But I think this is an excellent approach, and I'm very happy to see we've made this kind of progress. So the question is, have we had preliminary conversations with Addison Gilbert, Beverly Hospital, any others about just their thoughts?
I have reached out to your health department, to the new hires there. I've talked to different, I haven't approached hospitals per se yet. That's coming in the research. But in my travels, so some people at Family Medicine Associates, for example, in Manchester, people like yourself who have, a relative or somebody in the nursing field and what their feedback is. But the real work will come next year, developing that program advisory committee. So the goal is to get somebody from Addison Gilbert on that committee, and community people that are in the nursing field from all varieties, from the data to the, phlebotomy to registered nurse on that committee. So then we can network from there.
And they will also help us shape the curriculum and shape the works,
Great. Well, I'm
placements
meeting
and
with
all
Tom
of that.
Sands, the president of Addison. Okay, great. So I'm going to meet with Tom Sands in the next week or two. And if you don't mind, I'll break the ice with him just to give him a heads up of what's coming.
Thank you. Thank you. We can introduce by email.
Thanks, Greg.
Certainly.
Great,
Thank you.
always.
See no more questions.
So what we would like to have the committee do, and it can be, doesn't need to be tonight, it could be 2 weeks from now, just because this is new information, is to, vote on the approval of medical assisting program. That's something the committee would entertain. So that I think gives it a weight and a support and identified record of support for the program. If you want to do that, appropriate tonight or 2 weeks from now, because again, it's new information. There's no rush for it, but just.
I have a question. Is there anything in next year that you think we find out that this may not be the path Or is this now all about what your work next year is about, all the things you have to do to figure out the most successful implementation?
That one. You said it very well, so that would be, yes, that's exactly what we would be doing, is making this decision and then heading down the path of following all the steps that are required to and apply. There's a preliminary application
Yes.
that happens in the fall.
Yes.
Then there's like a deeper application and in putting together, as you were just saying, the advisory committee. And all those steps that go in would be really going full into the application process and working closely with you all and the state to make that happen.
And it's, sorry, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, it sounds like there's a template right down the road in Peabody and use their say, hey, what's that path look like for us? And well, how do we, what's the starting point? I'd certainly be willing to.
And the people at this just in preliminary conversation, so before the pandemic, like everybody else, it's just a thing people say, right? Before the pandemic. I actually broached the question with folks in the state. What would a health assistant, what would medical assistant, some of the things that we might be interested in our community if we ever were to have a fifth program. And they were so helpful in terms of walking us through the process, the people at DESE. They want to expand the number of vocational programs, particularly at comprehensive high schools like ours. So there's a lot of support there, and Brenda has a lot of friends there now, or too, and now, right, to help with the process.
Greater Lawrence has both programs, and so I have huge contacts over there. And from the CPT directors across the state as well. We all support each other. I've given a cursory look at the application and having you guys just kind of give it the rubber stamp, I can go.
So on that note, I'm so anxious to say yes, right? Because it sounds wonderful. We want to support it.
Sure.
But I always fall back to my procedural that's drilled in the back of my head that I fight with myself over. Do we know the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how?
Okay.
Right? So have we identified space where this class would be? Does that meet the zoning or the code requirements for this type of class? Do we have a budget for this program that I know we haven't discussed yet?
Right.
So to me, I see tonight as a nod, like, yes, go forward. But I think more information should come back to us and soon, if we do the work sooner, but like you said, the call isn't tomorrow, but it's coming soon, right? To know more particulars about it, because we heard earlier about how the electrical program might need more space, right?
Yeah.
And things like that, because it's not just about this one class.
Right.
We're going from 4 to 5, which
Yes.
means more responsibility for you. But I'm of the sound mind to say, I want to be doing our other programs right and not put all our efforts just into this new program, right? So to me, I think this is part of a bigger conversation, but definitely on the right path. But I would want to hear more about how this is going to fit into the current programs we have, literally, meaning physically fit
Space.
into it. And how many teachers we're going to need, or is it a teacher and an aide? What is the expenses of the program? I think we should have a more in-depth conversation for the vote to know exactly what we're getting into, to know exactly how much money we need, not only for this program, but for other costs that may associate with the other programs if they collide a little bit. But that's how I see tonight, and I don't want to put any pushback to this path. I think it's wonderful, but I don't feel like all those questions are been answered yet. And not any fault of anything
No.
other than this.
There is extra, I know that there's a big push for the state and there's extra funding for startup.
Yeah.
And it would require probably 2 nurses.
Yeah.
2 RNs as instructors, but that's down the road.
Yeah, right, I think that's down the road, I think, and
Yes.
that's the work we need to do from here. right?
Yes.
As we described.
Yeah.
But I
Yes.
also wanted to, I'm just, before we start talking, I just want
Okay.
the committee.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like you're just asking for approval to take those steps that Melissa's asking.
Absolutely, yes.
It's, to me, yeah, we can say, yeah, go ahead, move forward. The details can be, they're gonna come out, and they're not gonna come out tonight or next meeting, but we're kind of giving you permission to lay out the roadmap to those details, I think.
Yeah,
It's my thing.
I think, I think both is a great step, in terms of like, and again, this is, sort of my request, the committee, give us some direction that this is the right path to go down. Knowing that, the team's got to make some due diligence and work with the state to come back and answer all the questions you pose, Melissa, because those are our questions, right? 100%. So I think even if it's, sort of nod, approval, whatever, to go forward with this, so we can do that work, I think is important.
And not tonight, but maybe there's a motion that basically says we support the plan of activities for next year related to developing this particular program, because we've talked for a long time about adding a fifth program, very long time. And I think having our support and also the public acknowledgement that this is what we're working towards, I think really does a lot for the community to know what are, one thing about our CDT program, right? And maybe people will pay attention and realize that all the other great things we have there too. So maybe we should consider that for the next school committee meeting. Just so that we're basically saying, we see your plan, we've seen what you've done, we know where you're basing your recommendation on. And unless we find information that makes us say,
Yeah, as we
did
continue,
you, not that I would say, did you think of X? Because I haven't done this research, but this is what we expect people to do this research.
Yeah, I was just wondering, have we reached out to the student population and gauged what kind of interest maybe we would generate in the program? Or maybe how many students graduate to go on to those certain types of careers?
So how we handled it, we talked about that as well.
Yeah.
And so instead of survey, which didn't feel quite right, because we like 15 out of 800 kids, we're gonna get there. Like that's not the problem, right? Because they have limits to how many kids can be in. So it's more like talking to kids, as you saw in the couple quotes that Brenda pulled. It was like, that's the approach that we took to make sure that there was some excitement. This was fitting with plans that folks have. I didn't pull for this meeting the post-secondary plans of in the nursing field with Laura Carlson, our coordinator of guidance, but that is something that I looked at to corroborate the work that Brenda is doing in her planning. And that's, again, students beyond the folks who are in this program will continue to go into nursing as well. You know what I'm saying, right? Like they're gonna go other paths as well to get to that endpoint. So it's a bigger pool of our overall 800 students, some of whom will go through this particular program and others of whom will end up in nursing and other health fields coming out of the general population. Yeah.
I think the other piece on that is also there's recruitment and marketing around this as a possible path. Talk about pathways for our HS students. There are going to be a number of students that don't even think of this as a pathway until we bring it to their attention. And then yeah, that is something I do want to do. I didn't know this. So it's also that piece about creating it as well.
There are some students in the vocational programs that are going on to nursing in our traditional programs, so they're there.
It would be interesting to learn from Essex Tech how many Gloucester students are going there to get into their health assistant, right? And I know there's a lot because I was there for 9 years, but to bring that information back, I think that's your answer as far as pulling the students. You'll learn that there's a long line for that program.
Yeah.
Well sought after.
Yep. They
And
already
to
have
me,
the
that's
numbers.
the student answer right there, but that can give you some data without pulling every single student in Gloucester.
That may take some time. Getting data from them sometimes.
Yeah, we don't miss it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Great work.
I really believe in that, it was really appropriate that Tim from Consult was talking about building blocks. And what I hope people see is when we try to step by step keep making progress in things. This is something James and I laid out probably 2 years ago executives, maybe more, I'm not sure, about the path towards strengthening our existing programs and building the fifth program. And we remain on that plan, on that schedule, and putting the building blocks in place. So, but I think that's an apt analogy. This building blocks.
Building blocks, this case.
CBT. Yeah, it's a good analogy. Good analogy. As we continue growing and expanding, you're gonna have a CBT.
Good analogy. Good analogy. Wow. Yes, great analogy.
Right, whatever, we continue to build and step by step making progress. So I'm really proud of that and really glad that.
Thank you, Brent.
Brendan's here.
And thank you for having us and having this regular, we have a consistent, regular opportunity to also share with you all what's happening with the current programs and kind of what our plans are for the future. And, I really appreciate that you come visit the other committees interested in visiting the programs. And I know the teachers really appreciate that as well. Kids really appreciate, and then they, appreciate when we're able to come and present at places like this on their behalf. So thank you.
Your perspective is so valuable. It's just so valuable. Because then it helps define the new work, and where to go.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
you. Thanks for all the support.
Yes. Would it be, if we did the budget now, or do you want to, or the next thing on the agenda is the program subcommittee?
I think the budget probably.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a quick, very short presentation, sort of recapping the budget and what I shared, presented to you a couple months ago. Share this. There. So, you folks have seen this, but just as a reminder, and also to sort of be clear about what we're looking at, I want to talk about the primary drivers of our budget increases for this year, and then also summarize the total increasing expenses we've seen, increasing costs, and also how we are trying to address those costs. So. Not only in Gloucester, but across the state and perhaps across the country, the pandemic and the aftermath of it have really have changed the landscape fundamentally in many ways in education, in our schools, and master's schools and beyond. And that also means impacts on everything we do. And of course, that is related to cost as well. So I'm going to describe the pandemic disruption on students and costs and how it continues. That's impacting staffing challenges and also program improvement areas that really must continue. So I'll summarize them here. The post-pandemic disruption that we're seeing that's really driving increase in our costs for FY 2024 are the increase of significant and complex needs that we're seeing in students that exceed the capacity and the profile of our current special education programs and our regular education programs. We're seeing continued increase in emotional and behavioral needs due to the aftermath of the pandemic. And then also post-pandemic disruption, of course, is affecting inflation and cost increases. And that's particularly on things like transportation, tuition, food service, and in other areas. Another driver of our increase in the proposed GPS budget are staffing challenges. We're seeing historic staff shortage across many positions. It's harder to attract, hire, retain position types such as special education, English learners, transportation, food service, paraprofessionals. Those challenges and shortages are leading to market and competition factors and making it difficult for us to stay competitive on our salaries. Shortage in supply equals higher costs in almost every area of our sector of our economy, and that includes staffing and education. And then also really need to do increased training and professional development needed for a variety of our staff roles. And that includes everything from transportation to bus drivers, paraprofessionals, as well as particular teaching roles as well. And the other piece that we don't want to let go of, but we've had a good start on and want to continue strengthening and strengthen our programs, and that particularly focused on O'Malley. O'Malley has not gotten support in terms of curriculum instruction support, funding, and that sort of thing over a number of years. And we've begun that and want to continue that. We've just spent a lot of time talking about strengthening and expanding career book tech. As I just mentioned, we've been on a plan to do that the last couple of years and want to continue that. And there's great support for that. And then also what we've been doing sort of across the board, pre-K through 12, is continue our curriculum instruction and intervention improvements that result in improved academic learning. So those are the main drivers of what's impacting our budget in terms of its growth and increases. So let me go into now what that means in terms of dollars and cents. Again, as folks know, we gave a much longer presentation 2 weeks ago that went into very much detail in all those areas. But just to summarize, these are those 3 areas: post-pandemic disruption, staffing challenges, and strengthening programs that I just described. And these are costs associated with increases due to those impacts. So if you look at post-pandemic disruption, the first category here, you see costs of special education increases in tuition and staffing are very significant this year. More adjunct placements we're anticipating. And I gave detail during our last meeting about the examples of increased transportation increases in terms of out-of-district transportation. We're going from $200 a day in transportation to over $400 a day for transporting, one student or 2 students. Our health insurance increase, which is typical every year, but that's $400,000 an increase. That's a more typical increase than we've seen. It's not above average. Our staffing challenges, though, certainly we need to make salary increases and adjustments. So some of these are built into our regular anticipated salary increases. And some of these are also part of what we're working on to make adjustments based on more competition for staff, but also other contractual arrangements. And the strengthening of programs. So as I described in detail during our last meeting, one of the areas that we're approving is O'Malley, and that includes taking positions that are funded by ESSER and bringing them onto the operating budget. There are 4 positions at O'Malley if you want to do that, and those are in the areas of special education and intervention and academic support, also behavioral support as well. And then the other 2 positions are at the high school, and that includes social emotional support in terms of guidance counselor, and also then adjustment counselor, and then also special education as well. So high priority areas that we want to continue in the move on to the operating budget, both for O'Malley and GHS. And then also, as I mentioned, prioritizing CBT improvements. So that's the moving director from a grant funded position onto the operating budget, and then the development of a new program and the initial part of staff much later in the year. So total cost increases, and this is not the increase in the budget, but it's $5.3 million. Now we also every year have offsets to lower or to limit the impact of any cost increases, and those are summarized here. So staffing and salary adjustments, this is based on enrollment fluctuations. We will always adjust staff up or down depending on a few things like enrollment fluctuations, program changes, also what we call retirement savings. So we expect across those 3 areas to have savings of $420,000 in terms of staffing and salary adjustments. Circuit breaker is a significant adjustment from the state, part of state funding, and we expect to apply almost $1 million from our circuit breaker payment to offset the increases in special education transportation. We can apply that to different years, and we are choosing to apply that almost $1 million next year in order to lower the impact of those pandemic impacts. And then a health insurance offset. In our federal grants, we've not been allocating as much of the health insurance payments to our health insurance for staff in a number of our federal grants and can do that and will do that. That'll balance out so that $400,000 increase we see in health insurance costs by moving off of the operating budget onto the grants. And then another area that we can hopefully do an offset is we have capital dollars or capital project on grease traps trying to be done for at least 7 years to replace those at O'Malley and Gloucester High, and hoping we're able to offset that through a capital project, through expenditure from the city from their capital reserve account. Obviously that and all this we have to continue to work with the city on. So those are the total offsets. So we subtract that from that first cost increase. We get this summary. Cost increases are 5.3. I summarized that 2 slides ago. The offsets, I just summarized that $1.7 million. That means the total increase in cost is 3.675 million. Again, hoping to work with the city to get our grease trap costs for that capital expenditure onto a city capital reserve account. That would further reduce our operating budget increase down to $3.4 million. So that's the request that I've proposed to the school committee. Again, this is a summary presentation. The more detailed presentation is on our website. Operating budget increase of $3.4 million. A couple of very important pieces in terms of funding that are very important context. The state in its Student Opportunity Act funding, designed to go to schools, public schools, has determined that the increase through the Student Opportunity Act in our Chapter 70 aid from the state would be $1.675 million. In terms of the new funding formula from the state has also determined that Gloucester's city contribution to the schools should increase what they're recommending, and have determined that Gloucester is able to contribute an additional $1.725 million. Okay, state has determined not only are our costs increasing, and the state has determined they anticipate our costs to be increasing at the same rate we are. And they're saying that those dollars are coming from 2 sources: the state funding, $1.675 million, that first blue white line here. And then they're also saying that the city's local contribution should be increased by $1.7 million. So those combined together to give us the to match the funding request we're making. So again, that's significant, and that really comes from the reworking of the education funding formula at the state level that many folk advocated and worked for over years, and now the both the governor and the House are fully funding that new funding formula, and this is the assumption they're making, is that the state contributing nearly 1.7, the city can also contribute 1.7, and that matches our anticipated increases. So it's a more significant increase than in the past. Typically, we are in neighborhood of 2.75, almost 3% increase. This is more than double that, but it's also really tied to specific costs we've already identified and anticipated. And then this is the budget by department, and this is actually the dollar amounts and the way we present the budget for the public hearing and the public hearing notice. So you have the 3.4 increase. Last year's total operating budget, this current year FY23, then the recommendation for FY24, and that's what this is the numbers that you would that we're requesting you vote to approve. Will be the budgets presented at the public hearing on May 10th. So,
Anybody have any questions?
I just remember a comment, and I just want to sort of say this differently in terms of Chapter 70 funding.
Sure.
I think it's really hard to understand. So, and I'm going to say all this and definitely jump in if I'm not correct. Okay. So this year we're requesting 50 million
The required local contribution based on the state is around 36 million. So that's required. That's what they're saying the city should, at minimum, provide to us. And then there's the chapter 78 of 11 million, a little over 11 million. And those two numbers, the required local contribution and the chapter 78, brings us to our foundation budget, which is $47 million. Right? So that's what the state says we should be spending on education, 47 million. That's what was last year, right? What I hear over and over again is why are the school's budget so high? And to me, I think we just have to keep saying the state says that we should be spending this much money. We're not out of ballpark here. And I think it's very important for us to continue to repeat that the state says that this is what we should be spending. So that $3.4 million difference from this year to last year, if you take away that increase in chapter 78, which is new money that should be coming to schools, really, we're only asking the city for 1.7 million, which is what they gave us last year. Is that right?
That's, yeah, it's, I mean, the last year, 1.7 is a combination. I mean, it's hard to, let me answer the question a little differently, okay, because it's just hard to, you know. All state funding from chapter 70 in formula goes to the municipality, city or town, Gloucester or, you know, Framingham or wherever, okay? And then that municipality decides what of that chapter 70 funding goes to the schools, okay? So there's not a direct line, okay? And so, you know, it's hard to say X of those dollars came from the city, X came from the state. I can't answer that question. Perhaps other folks, maybe, you know, city administration know those exact, you know, sources. Okay, we don't ever really get that from the city, and nor do we actually ask for that. But but it's whatever the city provides in terms of revenue is always a combination of those two of local contribution and state funding. Is that I can't answer how it's divided, and it's any specific.
Go ahead.
So just being my 14th year having this conversation, I just want to give you a little bit of what the pushback is, because it sounds so simple, like why isn't this happening, right?
It's certainly not
So
simple.
when we get into our advocating to our city council liaison and start our conversations with the city, one of the conversations we'll be having is how much money comes out of the city budget to educate 100 students at Essex Tech. And that's a couple million, I believe. I looked at the most recent number, but that they look at that as a cost to education, right? And I'm not,
Our students.
our students going there and they pay that bill. So that's in addition to this. So, and I'm not trying to say the formula that we're presenting and the request isn't accurate and correct and it should be funded, because I believe wholeheartedly it should. But these are the conversations that are gonna come back at us, so it's not that simple. Then we can bring up the fact that the city receives Medicaid reimbursement from health insurance that we bill our students for. That money goes to the city side, you know, so there's a lot of tugs, pushes and pulls that go back in the budget that's not just related to this simple formula that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, I think for me, what was helpful is to see what the state says we should be spending. Right.
But now you're gonna define what spending on education means, and that's I don't wanna say battle with the city council, but that's the conversations that we have to have and be convincing. Yes, there are other expenses that go to Gloucester students, but that's not helping us here in Gloucester where we're at. This is what our students here need, right? So that's where we gotta navigate through the muddy waters. So requesting money from the city. Go ahead, Lauren.
I just wanted to say that the trick is that the state is a formula where they recommend, they don't require.
Right.
So that you use the word required, like they're using a formula, right?
That school is required.
Yeah, net school is required. That required local contribution of 35 million says it's required on the state's website.
Well,
Right, but
Then you have capital money.
but then the increase is not, it may be.
The increase is
it's-
not.
Right,
Right, so.
That's the minimum. And it says right on the state, most municipalities give more than the required local contribution.
And Gloucester
Oh,
does.
yeah, we all.
Right,
So-
right. So I'm just saying that we have it.
Yeah.
I think part of what took me a while to get my head around is the fact that because this money goes to a municipality and not to a school district, the municipality has discretion. And as Melissa's saying, there's other places where this money can go and be legitimately. I also wholeheartedly think that this is exactly where we should be and what that we need money for. But I think part of the real complication here is that there isn't a requirement that Chapter 70 student aid, the Student Opportunity Act comes to the Gloucester Local School District. And for me, that was confusing at first and is a really big piece of this puzzle.
And they can say, okay, we're gonna give you that money, but we're cutting our share somewhere else, right? So there's a way around the whole Chapter 70 conversation as well. It's just a matter of being convincing in our reasoning for why we're asking this money. They can bring up capital money that they put into the buildings, it goes towards the schools, the custodians are on their side now. You know, there's other expenses on the
Right.
city side that are school related. And if there's those in the community that you talk about that say schools get too much money, that's because a lot of the times, some in the past, we've heard from some city council as well, the schools are getting 54% of the city budget when they calculate all those accounts. So I think
We're
it's
all
just
the
that,
largest employer by a long shot. We're all also the
Yeah,
largest employer by a
exactly.
long shot.
right? And there's, like I said, those are the conversations we just have to have. We have new members on the city council that weren't there last time. And just educate ourselves into how the money formulas work and convince the city that this is what we are putting forward to best educate our students that are here in our schools.
Yeah, and when you look at like the percent increases over the last couple of years.
We're in
Chapter 70 funding, I look at that increase, the extra money over the required local contribution that Gloucester has given us every single year. And sort of kind of making up for that gap, but now the state is finally catching up to right that
Right.
ship. And the city
we want
really
that.
needs to make sure that we stay on that right track.
So Bill, I'll come to you right after, I want to make this point. So that is the reason Ben has put in the increase from the state in terms of what they think our increase in spending should be, 3.4.
Yeah.
Because that is an adjustment. That is the acknowledgement that for, since 1993, which is when this all these formulas got put in place, and then along the way, there's been a need for a correction for a very long time. And so now we're finally seeing that correction in terms of their calculation, in terms of reality of the cost to educate kids, and the reality of the funding that the state should be giving more to the communities for education. Go ahead.
And to the demographics of the kids that you educate,
Exactly.
which is.
And
This is a-
inflation in
yeah,
general,
this is-
right? 9% over the last
Humpty
year.
Dumpty school over, and this is, reality is 25% of our kids need special services.
And that's why the formula's been
Yeah,
changed,
yeah, yeah.
because they're now taking into account.
60% of our students are high needs.
Right,
Exactly.
You know, it's a
60%.
25% increase from, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And the change in the funding formula. It really was intended to zero in on students who, for really important reasons, have higher needs
Yeah.
and, and need additional services and Gloucester has that.
Yeah, absolutely. And my other point is that the formula is much more granular than it's ever been. It's much more defined, it's much more municipality specific, and I almost have to check myself because I don't want to say anything that I shouldn't say, that it's certainly difficult to look at the budget and say, wow, there's a lot to cut there. There's plenty of room to cut. I just don't see it at all. With the new formula, with the Chapter 78, that's the student education stuff.
Mayor, would you like to join in this conversation?
Yes, first of all, you're all frozen on my end. Can you guys hear me in real time?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's good. Because I have like 8 still photos on my screen, but
And no sound, right?
what you say? No. So I just want to, set some realistic expectations. First of all, I'm going to support this number going out for public hearing, but I am not going to say right here I'm committed to fulfilling it later on, because a lot of you hit on some of my points that I'm going to make. The fact is, my days on the school committee back from 2002 through 2008, we were fighting the formula that was ridiculously skewed against us for Chapter 70. But the city has always funded the school. The city has always funded the school department in spite of it, to the best of their abilities. And I would argue in recent years, they funded it very well and far above the foundation budget. So when the Chapter 70 was corrected, there wasn't like last year, we didn't correct down our typical support for the school department. This year, it's a different time. So I think there's going to have to be some pencil sharpening. But we're close, but we're not quite there yet. But let's get it out to public hearing, hear what people have to say, because there's technically 2 battles. One is to get what my office puts forward, and then what the council ends up voting. So, and we're dealing with 100% of the budget that we have to make sure is balanced, and that we're fairly added where it's needed. So again, I'm just trying to set expectations, and want to remind people that the city has been funding well above the foundation budget. And so
What?
Chapter 70 money, the Chapter 70 money does flow through the city first. So I just want to get that out there, make sure everybody sort of understands where I stand at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 motions related to this. One is to vote to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget for public hearing in the amount of $50,397,696, and I so move. Second. Okay, any discussion?
Can I ask a question? It seems like a large portion of our school budget goes to out-of-district placements. What are those institutions? Are those private institutions? Right?
Private and public, yes, combination.
And we don't have anything like that in Gloucester.
No, we have just run programs for a variety of areas. One is language-based disabilities. Another one would be we call ABA, or autism spectrum. Those are the services. And we have really, those are the 2 primary ones, but those are different schools, K through 12. And those are programs. I mean, I'll just give you a concrete example, which is easy to understand because it's all local. Is our language-based classroom, which is kids who are typically dyslexic or that sort of profile. Without that type of district program, we often would have more students going to out-of-district placement, like Landmark. Schools. Yeah. They're sort of similar in terms of the support they provide. We don't have the full range for all students because just like most municipalities, we have kids with some very severe needs, which may include a residential program. Obviously, we don't provide residential program, or other needs that may be sort of specific enough or niche enough that we don't haven't developed a program for that.
Yeah.
So one area, as Katie, our special educator, Katie Provo, and I have talked about recently, she's thinking a lot about and working, with principals on is, are there other profile programming to develop district wide that we don't offer right now, but there may be a growing need for that we could offer in-house instead of if we can't offer in-house, kids are able or need to go out of house to get the type of service they need.
Yeah, I'm all about developing, in district, but I'm more curious about out of district. I mean, kind of a question for the mayor, is there like a way to like incentivize like the development of like a facility that could help us, so we don't have to kids don't have to leave Gloucester to get their high needs met. You know what I mean? Like, I just wish, since we have such a, a growing, need for this kind of services, and we're spending so much money, $400 for like 1 or 2 students just to get them to the school. I wish there was something closer,
Yeah, and I think that's work that we're actively doing, and that's part of the work, that's driving a fair, not being able to provide some programming in district is definitely driving a big chunk of the increases. That's tied to transportation costs, is also tied to a real growth in need that we are really, and I think many other folks are attaching in part to impact of the pandemic rather. So, but I think it's longer, as we think about, longer term and building towards, so we're able to provide in, one or two particular areas, more programs in-house, and that has potential to, whenever we can, it has so many benefits to be able to educate a child, close to home in district. That's always your preference. Sometimes, just like any other district, we don't have the capacity to do that. That's when the kid needs to be, we need to work with family to find more appropriate placement for that student. So, but I think that's something that I know that's something that we are actively working on, is what's the next, how do we have to adjust our current programs or develop new programs that are in-house for kids with severe special needs.
Maria, I think are ready to vote, please.
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Mayor Verga?
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weason?
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Melvin?
Yes.
And Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Okay, the next vote related to this is to approve the notice of public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2024 budget for publication, and that's the last schedule that the superintendent showed on his presentation.
Yeah, and also
There's one in
you have the actual
packet.
notice in your packet. I can show it on the screen if you want me to.
Yeah, which are
When is the budget hearing?
May
May 10th.
The
So you're gonna get this in the newspapers tomorrow?
Yes,
so this is the last.
it's not, just so you know, it's 7 days that before the public hearing. So, but my goal is to get it tomorrow. But that would be a publication on May 1st.
So that's listed as a school committee.
Yes, that's right. It happens at the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It
what
happens
we
during
be
Committee meeting, but they.
publicizing.
School committee meeting.
So this is the last page of your, last page of your packet, I believe. And it has this is what the notice is essentially. And the numbers are the same. I showed you the last slide.
So I move that we approve the notice of public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2024 budget for publication. Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Mayor Verga?
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weason? Yes. Chairperson Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Melvin?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We will go back to the action items.
Thank you very much, folks. Sorry, just spacing out there for a second. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's a subcommittee.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Laura.
That's okay.
Subcommittee report.
But
By
it's,
Laura Weason.
so the program subcommittee met on Thursday before April break to take on a few policies and adjustment. So the first one is school choice policy, which is file JSBB. And it had been referred that there was a question about how we give priority to students, for Gloucester Public School students who move out of the district during the school year. So in your packet is the adjustment that we made in Article 7 that we need to bring to the school committee. So did I read it aloud?
And I can also show as well.
Oh, good. It's in blue.
And this is a package. Page 54.
Right. So I'll just read it and then, if you have any questions. Generally, applications for school choice must be submitted prior to the beginning of the school year for which the student is seeking admission. A late application may be accepted at the discretion of school administration. But applications from outside Gloucester, outside the Gloucester Public School District will not be accepted after the first term has ended. Gloucester Public School students moving out of the district after January 31st will be given priority to remain in the Gloucester Public Schools what we're trying to say is in their Gloucester Public Schools school for the remainder of the school year, provided, consistent with this policy, there are no safety concerns, attendance issues, or a record of serious disciplinary problems. The student would be required to apply for school choice to remain in Gloucester Public Schools for subsequent years. So we're trying to cover a lot of ground here. And Melissa and Amy was part of this. Yeah.
Just one, and essentially the problem we're trying to remedy is so it sort of came to light this year was families moving out of Gloucester at this time of year or a little bit sooner. The policy as it was written didn't allow us to accept applications to continue via school choice in the original paragraph 7. Because it said very clearly, applications will not be accepted after the first quarter of the school year. And talking with community members in a sense, and also with administrators, including Principal Beatty and Cook, didn't believe that was necessarily the intent. The intention of the policy wasn't to force students who have been here and are here into the second half of the year to disrupt their school by forcing them to leave schools. And so the revision is attempted is the subcommittee's attempt to change the language so it allows those families who need to move out for whatever reason to finish the school year here if they're moving past January 31st.
And if there's none of those concerns.
Right.
Those hidden concerns.
Yes, and those concerns, as it says here, are consistent with the policy, and as always, it's same with the policy in terms of the sort of 3 caveats of safety concerns, attendance issues, or record of serious disciplinary problem. Sorry, that is that's consistent with, I believe it's number 4. Thank you.
And just to dovetail into that, then the other thing that we spent a lot of time talking about was the language with regards to student needing to reapply school choice for the following year. Just because you finish out the school year it's not an automatic that you are coming back to Gloucester. So you have to reapply as a formally school choice, formally.
That was raised by the principals as a, right, I mean, that was raised by principals as an issue.
Yes, because allowing them to stay in the school to finish out the year is different than accepting school choice. So since they're accepted school choice, they stay the remainder of their education. This is to let them finish out the year. Then if they wanted to come in as school choice, they would apply for the following year.
I just have a couple of, go ahead. So I have a question on that though too. So when a student chooses Gloucester for high school, do they submit a school choice application every year?
No, that's why it's different.
We're making just
If you, the number 8 will say that once they apply, they're in until graduation unless they break a rule.
And so so let's just say they were an 8th grader when they moved. So now they're going to be freshmen. And that summer they submit the official school choice application, which basically says we live here, but we want to go stay in school, be in school here. That means that they then are a Gloucester student until they graduate if they so choose. In other words,
If they apply for the following year and are accepted, then yes.
they just, because then once we accept somebody into our district as a school choice student, this is what I always assume, they're here.
Right, so this provision is just letting them finish the year, and then they are welcome to apply.
Because they missed the deadline.
They missed the deadline and they're already sitting in a seat in our school. They're not adding to a classroom. We already have provisions for them. And it's it's to weigh, is it more disruptive to make a student leave the school in the last 2 months of school?
Yeah.
Where
how can
at the
continue?
discretion of administration, we could say you can finish this year, and then if you'd like to come back next year, here's the school choice application.
Because what the new seven doesn't do, it doesn't actually have them while they're here, as they just moved out, it doesn't have them go through the school choice process. They're not going through the school choice process
Right.
twice.
No,
They actually aren't going through it if they've just moved. They will only go through it if they want to continue the following. So I don't want folks to think that we're actually making them go through it twice.
no.
Is that what it sounds like?
No, this opens the gate for them to finish the school year.
Yeah, that's all.
And then you want to stay, you reapply as a school choice student.
And we did talk about that last line for quite a bit, to make it very clear that the student would be required to apply for school choice to remain in the school, so not reapply. They
Yeah,
would be-
that's the
they
wrong
would-
word. is re-
Right, they would be required to apply for school choice to remain in the Gloucester Public Schools for subsequent years.
Which basically closes the loop on the formal process.
Yes,
Okay, you have a question?
No questions. When is the end of the first term? What is the date?
well, we didn't say the end of the first term because it's different
It
for.
says will not be accepted after the first term is
Oh,
ended.
well, it's different for elementary and middle and high, because elementary has 4 quarters. No, three terms and trimesters, and middle and high has 4 quarters. I have it backwards in my
So
head, sorry.
roughly,
Oh,
Roughly for elementary, it's around the beginning of December.
Okay.
It's earlier for middle. and-
so let me ask you this then, because this makes absolutely no sense. If they don't apply within the first term has ended, whether it be elementary or high school, is that gap until January 31st? So
Good.
why was January 31st picked as a date? In other words, if the student moves on December 27th,
Yep.
they don't have any recourse?
So the discussion with the administration, this was input from
Yeah.
the principals and, was that if a student is moving to another district, it's harder to settle into a new school for only a couple months and then go into summer. So if the majority of their school year would be in their new district and they're gonna move, then it would be time to move.
So I'm gonna argue with you, so I'm gonna argue.
Okay.
So I get that, right?
Yep.
But I also we've talked on the school committee for years how we want to welcome and encourage school students to come to our school district, right? We're doing the vocational program because we want school kids to choice in, right? School choice, right? We encourage that.
Yep.
But here, you're saying if they do it in the first term, it's okay. But then for the next 30 days, it's not okay, but then it is okay after January 31st. So that gap to
But
me
they're not-
makes,
They're not applying for school choice after January 31st. They're being allowed to stay.
so why can't they be allowed to stay after the first term regardless, because you're talking about 30 days difference? And if you have a student whose family decided to move away, but the family loves the Gloucester Public Schools and thank you very much, and it's December 15th, why is there that gap there where, okay, it's too late to file for the first term and it's not January 31st yet, so hey, I better not move in the month of December. Why would we even create that situation? Just say yes after the first term, so long as you're meeting the attendance and the safety issues. Why is there that 30 days or 40 days in between that there's no recourse? Because of course, that's gonna happen here, and we're gonna be on the school committee trying to figure out why are we doing this?
I can understand the language in terms of accepting school choice applications. So we set the enrollment within that first term, right? So that's managing staff, it's managing classrooms, it's getting kids off to a good start. So therefore, if it's after that, we would not want to disrupt our, all that planning in terms of accepting new students from somewhere else. But I'm kind of with Melissa on this.
This is for students that are in our school. This isn't students.
No,
that
but
are
that, so
in
that
the
was the
school.
first, so there's two pieces. One is outside. At the beginning of the year. It's from a different community that want to come in. So there's the date of the semester. So that you're getting them off to the good, you've got to cut off on the semester. In terms of kids who have already started in our schools. And they're part of our enrollment, I would not want them to leave if they don't want to. Regardless of when they would.
For that school year? So
In
what
other
is
words,
that?
For that
take out
school
that
year.
January 31st.
For that school year.
date.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. What does that mean from the administration standpoint?
I think just like to think about it some more. I mean, just hard, so. Just want to make sure, and so that's what is often will happen is committee will raise some important questions, make some very helpful points, and then we want to check it, with other folks. I wouldn't be prepared and with Amy, just to change, just to adjust right now on the fly. And I don't think he wants to do that, but so and to make sure, I think it's a suggested change, although we haven't heard from everybody, but to essentially, I think I had this right, eliminate any deadline for those families who are in our schools currently, regardless of when they move out.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, that's very good.
So if the student starts on the first day of school and the next day they move, are they allowed to stay the rest of the year?
So you can take school choice applications, if that happens,
Okay.
why wouldn't they?
Okay,
You're
I was
there,
just
you
trying
have
to
this
clarify.
seat, it was
Yeah.
planned on for, it's not a surprise. It's probably more of a surprise that they're moving out of the city than it is they're moving in, so I just welcome student choice in. We vote to take students in.
Okay.
So to me, this situation shouldn't be any different than school choice, although it's giving a priority to keeping kids that started the school year, whether it be day 1 or day 90 or day 150, to stay if the family wants them to, because that means we're doing our job and the student wants to stay, right? So that's a, thank you very much, can I please stay? The only other issue I have is, and it's not because of the change of this language, but I would like to see a definition of attendance issues. Because that can mean, that's such a subjective word. And we change our attendance policy to encourage kids to be at school, so there's not technically a number anymore. So for this policy to stand alone as the school committee changes and superintendents change, define what an attendance issue is somehow, somewhere. Because you might think 5 absences in one term is bad and some other decision maker may not. So I understand that attendance should be considered, but at the same time, we all know in this day and age with kids and their attendance, it's a big problem, which is why we addressed it through our policies. So I wouldn't want to say, oh no, forget it, you had 10 absences, you can't come, right? When there could be issues behind that attendance. So
Can I just say, back that up first, what's the rationale? Of having attendance issues in this?
So
I don't think we were here when you made the.
yeah, that was, the only thing we
that's-
changed was just what's in blue.
Yeah,
That's
it's already number 4,
Oh.
look at number 4.
Yeah,
It's already there.
Yeah, so the rationale of have it repeated in 7 is so that we're not counteracting
Right.
the previous,
yeah,
the
Yeah,
number 4.
I mean, it's interesting because I think like our change in attendance policy might trigger some of these things because we're looking at it.
Right, this was approved in 2019.
Yeah.
yeah,
So we are looking at attendance in a very different.
right. And then I want to go to the argument you already started, which is they have to reapply. Why? It's a school choice policy. Why do we have different kind of?
But they wouldn't have
haven't
reapplied if it was
applied.
after the first
wouldn't
term,
have applied.
because they're not, we don't, if this policy is saying we're not accepting applications after the first term. They wouldn't be able to apply, so we're just letting them stay to apply for the
So
next year.
you're saying this is just a temporary situation, even though it's in the school choice policy?
So what we're trying to.
So that's
so what
confusing
we're trying
to
to,
me.
we're trying to prepare.
Yeah, no, I
or
understand.
Revise something that the policy
We
that
didn't
was
think of.
written forced,
Right,
Okay, yeah, so that's, you know, that's essentially what we're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, you're sort of granting them that they don't have to go through any process. They just have to tell us they want to stay, essentially.
And it's an automatic yes?
Yeah, well, I mean, no.
It's a
it's on-
Priority, it's not, so
It's
that's the
not-
difference,
they're
yeah.
consistent with the policy
Yeah.
though, okay, which is, you know, provided, specifically by there are no serious safety concerns, attendance issues, or record of serious disciplinary problems. That was put in there to remain consistent with the policy.
No, I understand that,
You know,
yeah.
for important reason,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yep, so if it's after the first term, they're not applying for school choice, they're asking to remain for the remainder of the school year. And will have the option to apply for school choice for the following year, any subsequent.
And the only reason they were rejected, because they're already kind of accounted for in our system, right? Because they were there day one, is the school.
Well,
The
we have
reasons
new
listed.
enrollments all the time and the class size might go over
That's right, right, but you're talking about the current year or the next year?
the next
The
year.
next year.
Okay,
Yeah.
next year, okay, okay.
We might have an influx of third graders and, you know,
I get
there's no longer a seat.
Or there's a seat at a different school.
Or there's a seat at a different
Yeah,
school, there's
right.
something like that. There, yeah,
Okay.
there's all kinds of things that could happen.
No, I understand that. Thank you very much.
Do you have a question?
Well, I mean, I just want to dovetail on that. I mean, all of a sudden, this doesn't make any sense to me because we're applying school choice criteria on students that would be just honored as continuing students.
Well, this was brought to programs because of this discrepancy in the policy, which didn't allow students to stay. So this was referred to us for that reason, because this policy didn't cover that issue.
It actually prevented them.
Right, it
So we
prevented
have
them.
to
So
do this
if
policy.
you go back, like this is intended, I'm not, you know, I think these are all great questions, but this is intended to fix that block of kids staying. So that was how we got to here. So I don't know, I mean, do we write a one-line policy that says if you move out of the district, I mean, right, so that's for me the question. This is fixing, from my perspective, trying to fix this way that we were prohibiting kids from staying. Yeah. And that's, I think, what we want to stay with, at least from my perspective, because it's true, this is one sort of, it's like a little exception to school choice. We want to be able to have kids stay if they want. And the previous policy didn't allow them to. I think it's important to sort of keep that context.
Okay. As long as you're gonna discuss it again. I don't know what the language would be, but I think we should have the Beaman and Plumco preference for families that have those issues for that short, for those applicable years.
That's a different policy.
This is out of district coming to Gloucester,
Got
not
it.
inter-district.
So,
Right,
so now I'm gonna see the interest.
Right, so. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, this
So now
has
we
to
have more
refer
work
to
on
that,
it.
just to
So
refer
now we
to
have another policy?
Yeah.
So do we know which policy that is? All right.
It's probably somewhere around this.
Introduce-
Introduce. Okay, so we'll bring that.
Putting the. Plumco
And then we
in
bring
priority.
this back to the committee.
No, I
No,
think they're
just
gonna
bring it
pick
back.
it up, right?
No, but I think how do you just need some direction here? We can make, we can make the revisions, or we can have programs of committee, we make a revision, bring back to the full committee. Or we can work with the program subcommittee to get it right, and then go there and then back here.
I would say that if you can't take January 31st out of there right off the top, then obviously there's some issues to discuss. But if you can't, if you can just take January 31st out because that 40-day period doesn't make a difference, then you wouldn't need to discuss it, right? But if there's reasons for it, then discuss it.
So maybe you come back,
Yeah.
To me to decide. right? Right, so then maybe you guys look at it and decide if it needs another program meeting.
Yeah, so I have this, so yeah, so I have it, we'll work on it. Run it, and Abe's working with chair of the subcommittee. If chair thinks it's ready to come back to the fold, then we're back to the fold. That okay?
As long as we're acting under this temporary language.
We've acted,
This
we've
year.
already acted. Okay, yeah. you're right.
Can I just ask, for going back, the place where I stuttered, is the place where I had originally wanted to say to their home school, and we wanted not to say their home school. Will be given priority to remain in
Stay or-
their current school, all right, let's change it to their current school, because that's got Gloucester Public Schools school. Right, this went through a bunch of.
One day at GPS.
So are we just so I know, are we just looking at the date or the attendance might be a larger
That's a different.
conversation because so am I looking to revise that language or just the date?
I think just the date of the school.
Yeah. I
Got
think just-
Okay, yeah, then that, yeah.
And then we can refer.
Well, I'm not sure that this should apply to students that were just a moment ago, a Gloucester Public School student. And all of a sudden, we're saying, well, for you to finish the year, you need to make sure you don't have these issues that out
Well,
of
it's a
district students
privilege.
would.
It's a privilege, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a question here. If you've moved out, right? I agree with Melissa, we want to be welcoming. And if you have moved out of this district, you actually legally go to another district. If you have records of serious disciplinary problems, safety concerns. I mean,
You wouldn't have taken a school choice student anyway.
we wouldn't take them as a school choice student, but then maybe they don't remain in Gloucester Public Schools. I actually think, from my perspective, that's appropriate.
I follow more with Amy when she said, you know, what if that the attendance of that child now pushes a family away that lives in Gloucester that would have gone to that class and now can't because there's no room, right? That can happen. Trust me, it will happen. The things we don't think about will happen and cause us to bring this back again. But if that student is no longer living in Gloucester, was able to stay, but then the next year forces a Gloucester family that lives in Gloucester not to have their child in a class
They
for
would have
some
to-
reason, then that would be, and that to me has to have a priority to the Gloucester resident.
They're sort of in limbo here. They're not a choice student yet. So they're not taking anyone's spot.
Desi's perspective, they'd be a choice to.
They're a choice student by law.
That's true.
And if you have
Want them.
contractual language in the teacher's contract that says how large a classroom can be.
Right, and that's,
So if that student causes a problem because they want to stay in that class and it forces a Gloucester family student not to be in that class, to me, you have to prioritize and that's how you address it.
but see, I guess what I'm trying to grapple with, they're already placed. The assignments have already been, you know what I mean? Like,
So that's why.
But the following year is a new school and a different situation. They could be going from.
I'm not talking about the subsequent year at all.
There you are, because you're saying that they should automatically get school choice status, which is where I was at, right?
No, I'm saying their scenario, their snafu of like, hey, you know what, I get to finish advanced biology, but now all of a sudden, I don't have it because I'm going to a different district and what happens to my credit for college?
But that's what, the point of this was so that they could stay. But this is the point, this is meant to, this is actually intended, from my perspective, everyone correct me. To allow that kid
To finish.
to finish the year. What we're saying is, if that kid. It's, you know, we hope it's never gonna happen, but if that kid becomes a serious safety issue. I think the Gloucester Public Schools has a role in deciding. Right, like, that's what we do to protect our students,
Like, there's already systems in place to deal with that.
but
sort of-
that student is no longer a resident of Gloucester, so they're in a different category.
They are now a choice student, so they have to apply to be a choice. student.
It's a category that is, you're right, it is in limbo, but we're trying to privilege those students to stay for exactly this reason, so that kid can finish APBI. So kids who want to be here can be here. There's a caveat, like there is in life, right? If you present a serious safety concern or a serious disciplinary concern, maybe at the administration's, you know, at their observation and decision, you don't get that privilege. Because that's a choice.
And there's a whole set of consequences that goes with that, you know, tutoring at home, staying at home, paying for services, so. To me, I was kind of grappling where you're at now, but then came full circle to realize that. We're doing them a favor by allowing them to stay finish their school year, right? In other words, no disruption, we're welcoming, but the following year. You are now legally considered a school choice student because your address is not Gloucester.
Right.
So you have to apply like everyone else does And if you say yes, then you're here for the rest of your school.
I'm not concerned about
training.
that process, that's just like, they're not technically a choice student if they move out after
No, they're
January.
they are,
But,
they are technically
but they
a
haven't
choice student.
applied,
They are technically a school choice student in the eyes of enrollment,
Yeah.
and in the eyes of the Department of Ed. right?
so if that's the case,
But
then.
we're just saying,
You can stay.
We're
You don't have
fixing
to
it.
leave.
yeah, we're fixing our policy to acknowledge, they started, they're staying. They're Gloucester Public School
If we didn't
students. they're
change
not
the
missing.
policy, they would have to leave. And we want them to stay and finish the year.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that, it's just, it's just such a murky little situation where like all of a sudden, like this isn't their district, so we're just gonna follow the policy as far as out of district student placement goes and the criteria for that. And
Which is what policies are for. That's how we guide and by rules and regulations so that we treat people fairly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
it just seems weird to me that like up until a second ago, our GPS student is now not a GPS student, and you have this history of say disciplinary problems, and all of a sudden, you know.
So I can give one example, which isn't the sort of the most egregious, but I think so. One of the ways we think about this, of the principals and Amy and myself is just on the absenteeism. If a student is having a very difficult time getting to school every day,
And then exasperated by
and they live in Gloucester.
Yeah.
The chances of them having regular attendance to Gloucester.
Yeah.
Now in a different community to train well. So the best chance that child has of continuing their education in a productive way isn't to have them stay there.
Yeah, go to your current district.
Right, it's to be in their new district and you know, and help with a condition on them getting support. And that's just, okay, that's a pretty basic example. Situation where actually it helps the student more not to, you know, to actually lower the hurdles to get into school. And we essentially make the barrier larger than all it is.
Yeah, so we'll, as this is, we'll just apply the choice policies until, you know, in the interim, until they maybe become a choice.
Yeah.
You want the transportation ones?
Yeah. I was just thinking of another issue. Sorry, I didn't. want
No,
to-
I'm like, I'm getting more okay with it.
I was just thinking that there should be some language that says for the student that can stay for the remainder of the year, that the parent provides transportation.
I think it does. If you turn the paper over, number 9, the transportation is not provided by Gloucester Public Schools for
Right.
students attending Gloucester Public Schools under school choice. So we said this wasn't.
Who was saying they're not a school choice, you don't fit until they don't have.
It is
Exceptions in this.
All we're doing is removing the barrier of them actually applying. That's literally all we're doing.
It's still school choice there. We just, like, it's still school choice. We're just eliminating the process.
Telling them to apply for school choice the next year,
You say
so.
preliminary,
No, all we're doing is still school choice. Maybe we can say they're considered a school choice student, okay? We can say that maybe in this paragraph, okay? We're just limiting the process for it. They don't have to apply that
Yeah.
year.
We're doing
They
the
just have to
favor.
ask.
Right, okay.
Right, it
That's
doesn't apply,
student
but otherwise,
moving out
but
of
they
the
are a school
district.
choice student.
They are a school choice student.
So
So
state
say-
they're a school choice student. So we say they will be given priority to remain in their current school for the remainder of the school year as a school choice student. Do we need to sort of spell that out?
But then you're taking away their ability that they need to ask the next year, right? So that's the confusion.
I wouldn't,
That's what it
because
looks like.
then you have these, once you're a school choice student, you stay.
Right.
Number 8 says you stay to the graduate.
We are in this
All right.
weird.
Yeah.
But I think you guys.
I think we can make.
You will get it.
That's
Come
more
back.
kind
Continue your.
That's what I'm concerned. Do your best.
Remove that. Do we have a motion?
You know, we don't
It was
refer
very
back.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Next,
tabled?
it's tabled.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, then we went to a whole other big thing, which was social media and electronics. So I know, so there's 3 different policies that we examined. Let me just, so. There's EGAF, which is telephone services, last updated in 2003. There's JICJ, use of electronic communications devices by students. And then there's IJNDB, which is the acceptable use policy. So I'm gonna start there.
There's nothing in our packet in relation to these, so.
Yeah, we're not talking about.
We're not-
Oh, we're not talking about it, you're just giving us a.
I'm just-
Yeah, those are finished.
Okay, so I'll start with no, this is a like these policies are.
Mess.
Like,
That's not a good term to use.
No,
Which is why they were referred to me,
right,
right?
and we're in fine shape. So IJNDB, the acceptable use policy. Amy Pasquarello, in her genius, noticed that this had been created by a group, a coalition of students, parents, staff.
Parents, students, teachers, administrators. It didn't have IT staff. I would like IT
Right,
staff
we're gonna
involved.
So
Accessible use.
this is acceptable use, IJNDB.
Is this the one they sign off on? every
Yes.
year?
Yes, well, yes, although I did learn there were other policies written during COVID that are not in our packet, but
Not related.
for this, well, no, they're not, they don't say they're COVID, they were just written. But IJNDB, now, we have a motion, we are referring to the committee because Amy is planning to take this and create a new focus group and a new working group to come up with new recommendations for this policy, update this acceptable use policy for the district, for the kids to sign on.
So we referred it to you to update it.
Well, we can't update.
Right.
So, no, we could, but the request is
The
rather than have just the program subcommittee revise it. I would like to open up to a larger focus group, not a subgroup of this, a focus group with teachers, students.
Yeah, but you do that
administrators.
through them, so you don't need us, that's
We don't
you
need-
using
Okay, so we don't
administration to
need
help
that
you
to be a
do what you
motion.
want to do to update it.
So we
and
don't
then
need
you
that to be a
report
motion.
us.
Yeah, I was surprised that was a motion.
Yeah, no, you don't need to
Okay,
ask permission on how you want to revise
okay,
it.
so that's what we're doing with that one, great. Then,
Check.
with JICJ and EGAF, we looked at a whole bunch of other districts' policies that were on the MASC website. So there's basically, it runs the gamut from no devices, period, end of story. It can be taken from you and this to like lots of little like, you can use it in this way and not this way.
Right.
And everybody appears to be struggling with this. So,
Wait till the kids hear about it.
well, there's no, so we're still working with the administration to come up with first this IJNDB and then to sort of figure out what's actually happening in our schools. The GPS, again, there was a GPS online learning services and Chromebook use policy that went out from O'Malley and GHS during COVID. That wasn't one of our policies. So,
That was just, I think, in a handbook.
right, so that was in a handbook.
Digital virtual.
I guess what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of policies, they overlap.
But the
And-
COVID one we didn't approve, right? So it's
No,
not a
it's not.
policy.
It's not a policy, but it's an expectation, and so all of these are sort of operating in tandem, even if it's not a policy, right? So the schools are using different things, and the telephone services one, I mean, it's completely out of date. It's
The landline.
It's about landline. And none of the policies that we have currently make a distinction between the Gloucester Public Schools on wireless and like 4G, 5G. So all of this to say, we are still in process, and this is gonna take a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
And can I make it just a request that whenever these do come to us, that meeting has very little on the agenda? Because this is gonna be a very, very long conversation.
Well, so part of this whole school committee setup, right, is to have subcommittees where you do all the work and we can watch the meeting and then come here with that knowledge and you don't have to do things twice, right?
We don't,
Trying to get rid of all that. We
we
said we
don't
do
want to
things
have the same
twice.
conversation here
Right.
that they had there.
So
We just
you-
want to ask questions.
Right.
You have your meeting, we watch it for informational purposes only, and then we come to you with questions and maybe changes. We don't reinvent the whole conversation again. That's what subcommittee work is, right? If I sat here and did
Before
a,
you couldn't.
So I couldn't what?
before you watch the
We went
meeting.
to the meetings. We sat at the table illegally and asked questions.
What's the point of separating us all into groups? Why are we
That's
all,
what subcommittees are.
so you're expecting all of us to watch them?
No, but you can, if you have a genuine concern, I mean,
I see that.
to avoid the school committee member that's gonna act like, oh, I've seen this before, what do you mean?
What I'm
And sit
saying
here
is,
and
we
act
just
it.
spent an hour on a
January 31st.
January 31st. And
Hours.
All I did was ask,
No,
why do we have that day?
No,
And I couldn't ask that question at the meeting.
we spend a lot of time with this.
Right, but I'm still
I
trying to
I hear you. Topic that's.
So you're not the only school committee that spends a lot of time on policy discussions.
Yeah.
Okay, it is one of your three major
Right,
responsibilities.
that's the word.
100%.
So all I'm saying, like, it takes time, you know, that's okay.
All I'm asking is
Yeah.
to not have a heavy agenda then.
So what I can do, Sam, is
Well, that
this,
doesn't seem to have an error, because we have all these reports that we're doing every month, right? It should be done in
I can
subcommittee.
keep a tighter rein on this. I mean, this stuff is, it's just dense and
Yeah.
it's just
There's a lot.
endless. And so I can keep a tighter rein on it and bring, I mean, it's gonna be months before I can bring these, but, and I would also suggest that Grant be here.
Well, he should be at your subcommittee, right?
But I
Helping
think he
you
may
do
have
it.
extra questions here too. I
Maybe,
don't know, okay.
maybe we don't come back until we have something more definitive.
We
Right,
will,
yeah.
and so, okay, so what, we'll work on it.
And you can give us updates along the way, like if you talk about this at your next your next subcommittee meeting, but you don't make any decisions yet, and say, hey, this is, what we talked about, this is where
No,
we're
no,
at.
100%.
We hear it and say, hey, well, when you go back to it, maybe you want to go in this direction, right?
100%.
And then you do that, and then you give us another report, and then the final draft comes out, and then we do 3 readings of the new policy and prove it.
I think that's great. The one thing I will say is just
There
to
too
make
much twice.
a moment where we have to rescind other
Of
policies.
course,
Yeah, because some of these are just duplicates.
yeah, but that's what we do.
Let's clean it up.
Yeah,
And they're antiquated.
they're antiquated with duplicates and there's a.
Well, technology probably should be reviewed every year because it changes so much. Anyway,
Right.
I mean, we should
Yeah,
have-
so look at that.
Reviewed every year or written in a way that it adapts to it, knowing that technology.
Or just new technology comes forward that we didn't know, right?
But we could
So-
write, we hopefully can write it in a way that it doesn't say every Fitbit is
Right.
not allowed, but then, oh, I have an Apple Watch,
Right.
right? Or
Yeah.
whatever it is. We want to make it more generic,
Yeah.
general, so that it will
And we've seen
stand the
examples
test
of
of
that.
time a little.
We've
more.
I
seen
say MASC must have
Portable.
them, right? Because they're real generic,
Portable electronic devices,
They
the
do,
language,
yeah.
that's the language people are
which
using.
covers everything portable,
And
right?
everything that will come,
Yeah.
that's the way people are doing it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so, anyway, sorry about that.
Well, good
Thank you.
job.
There's a lot going on.
All right.
Thank you for doing that. It is a lot, but.
And it's, yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's really interesting. Districts are really not, on page about this.
No, you see on the news all the time, some people want the phone, some don't, you know, they put the little things in the front of the room where they all put their phones in a certain pocket.
I mean,
You
some
get
districts have like,
everything.
they can search your phone. I mean, all sorts of
You need a
stuff.
search warrant, so.
No, I'm just saying, like,
Just
there's
saying,
all
Google
sorts
it.
of stuff in all these policies.
You can search a lot, you can't search.
I'm gonna move that we start accepting grants, okay? And Sam supports me, I know that.
I can see.
Okay,
Okay.
first grant is, I move that we accept the Gloucester Education Foundation Gender Equity and STEM Club Grant in the amount of $10,000.
Second. I so moved.
I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Verda,
Do that, sorry.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
and Mr. Me.
Yes.
The next grant, I move that we accept Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative Cohort 4 grant in the amount of $277,877.
And I so moved.
Second. Yeah.
Okay. We don't need any discussion. Any questions on that grant?
Wait, what was it?
Sorry, preschool grant. Well, what? Let's go up, what?
I wasn't sure if that was a question directed at us or not.
My question always is, and you're not gonna have the answer to this anyway, is, and what do we have, is there anything that we have to do special to get the money?
No.
Is there any,
well,
are
yes,
there any
yes, no,
ties
so-
to any
so-
commitments
Let
to
me
it?
take a little moment to explain this.
Commitments to it, I think. is
Yeah, no, I
what-
think, because this is one of it's a very significant grant. And two, it's changing some of the ways we work at the preschool. And even more importantly, increasing the number of students we can support and service. And the way it's doing that is what we learned earlier this year is that and this is another pandemic impact. Which is there are more students being referred out of early intervention process, needing additional services, okay? We are, no matter, so they live in Gloucester, we are responsible for evaluating them if there's a request, either from their family or, perhaps in a preschool or thank you. And because those numbers have increased so much, we are at max capacity preschool to provide services. Okay? We already provide services to families outside of preschool, outside of elementary school. And one of the ways that happens is students may come to the preschool building and get services like speech or occupational therapy or physical therapy. Or they might go to one of our elementary schools during the school day and get a service, okay? Or they may, become enrolled at the preschool. Okay, so we've always done it that way in our own buildings. Because there is such an increase in students, youngest students needing services, and even before preschool, we can't provide those services at the preschool, okay, full. But Andrew Pirelli, director, worked with the DS Department of Ed on a way to develop additional staff that would provide services for students who are eligible for them at their own preschool. Okay. So, for example, there's some students who go to Pathways in the morning, and then in the afternoon they'll come over to the preschool for services. Okay. What their parents would really like to happen is have them stay at Pathways for the whole day. Okay. Or the Y is another example of this. And so with Pathways in the Y, for example, we started sending our staff over to those places to provide services for students who otherwise we don't have space for them to come to our school. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
All right. And because of that, and so that's additional staff, which we had to hire this year, because we don't have the space at the preschool. And by doing that, we've been able to service more kids and fulfill obligations, but also develop strong partnerships with the Y Pathways, particularly in the area of our staff, helping their staff learn about some of this and do some of this. So, but that's what this grant's for. It's not just funding preschool, it's actually funding the ability to provide more services that we're required to provide to more students who we are really maxing out on.
Outside of the preschool.
Outside of the regular enrollment in preschool. And doing it at a place where they already are.
Yeah.
Okay. And by doing that, strengthening really the collaboration and partnership between us and Pathways and Y, and also providing better service for those families.
So my question to you would be, and you may not have this answer, is that this is great, right? This is how we want it to be.
Yeah.
But next year, is there another grant coming, or do we assume the services of our workers going off-site and their money's not?
So it's a competitive grant. This is for this year.
Okay.
And our understanding is that we apply again for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prince,
I will say yes, thank you very much to that explanation.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
and Mr. Minnie.
Yes.
That concludes the action. Next is East Beveridge Elementary School update.
The only update I have quickly, just to give you a verbal update, is that last time we were here, I updated you on the fact that we had some trouble with switch gear on just in terms of it not being shipped when we had been told it was going to ship, and we were looking at a variety of different options. Those options are proceeding as I reported last time. The lease option has gone through the leasing equivalent switchgear was the first option, and we're still pursuing that. It's on the same time frame. We have done a lot of work on it in terms of understanding exactly whether that was going to work out. That switchgear, it has passed all that sort of analysis and And as I was talking to John Rich, our the head of WT Rich, it's like they're looking at micro details and where to use, and it passed all of that. At this point, they expect to get it next week, I think it is, and sort of targeting a May 12th installation of that. Okay, there's still some things to work through with the electrical electrical, the inspector, electrical and building inspector on that. We got to, we've got to go through the process with them, and also working with Engrid a little bit on that. But that's still a number one.
Is that the state inspector or the city inspector?
I believe it's a city inspector. It's a wiring inspector, and then building building inspector, and that's related to the the certificate of occupancy later on. Okay, but they're all connected, obviously. So, but that's all part of the process that we were expecting to do with the lease gear. So that's proceeding as hoped. They continue to apply pressure to the original manufacturer in terms of getting the original switchgear delivered in July, and swapping the permanent switchgear for installing the permanent switchgear in August. So that's all working on plan. That means that we still expect to have no hiccups in terms of occupancy and also opening, obviously. And the last piece on this that also helps move this forward is, you may remember, they had been on the temporary power we have there now. They were cycling the rooftop units. So they did 1 and 2 originally, or they did 1 originally, then they did 2 and 3. This week they're doing 4 and 5. It's up 7. Okay, and they'll do 4 and 5 this week, and that's all proceeding as they hoped. So all of the top units have been activated. 5 of the 7 will be by the end of this week, activated, run, tested, that sort of thing. So that's helping them in progressing in terms of electrical work they have to do. So that's just an update to say like things are going as we hoped from 2 weeks ago, and don't see any hiccups at this point in terms of occupancy and timing. And still, we're continuing.
Are we on the hook for the lease of the, or is the old?
I know that the John Rich reported us that they that we were working with the original contractor to say no, that we would not be on it.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I didn't get an update on where that stands. We're working to make sure that we're not.
Is there an end date to that lease, or maybe, as long as we need it, or is that?
I think I'm sure they're accounting for as long as we need it. I just don't know.
And the only other thing is the school building committee is doing tour on first month. They haven't. Okay. Any other new business? Okay. Motion to adjourn. So okay. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weason?
Yeah.
Chairperson Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Melvin?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Good night.